So, our next speaker is a freelance UX coach and consultant that empowers UX people to identify and unfold their full UX potential. She supports them in building sustainable, user-centered products together with their teams. No matter your role, Madita's talk will take away the fear you might have to focus on accessibility and give you a glimpse into the legal requirements that will come up in the near future. So please welcome, put your hands together and welcome Madita to the stage. Thank you.
Yeah, hello, hi, welcome you all. It was already said a lot, so I'm Madita, I'm from Hamburg in Germany, so don't mind my accent, it's a bit kind of German-like. So yeah, today I want to talk with you about accessibility, and my title is Stop to Disability. And how have I come up with that? So I was thinking about the wording, disability. What does it mean and why does it sound like disability? Wait a sec, there's ability in it, right? And ability is some kind of a power thing, and to dis is something not so positive behind it. So, and I have to read it to you because the definition of the Oxford Learners Dictionary is actually to dis is showing a lack of respect to somebody. And ability is the fact that somebody or something is able to do something. So this is why I thought, wait a sec, does this mean disability means showing a lack of respect for somebody that is able to do something? This is a quite external view on the topic, right? So why do not have the people who might have a disability a say in that? And to give you a little more context about disability, I would like to take you on a small journey through the history of disabilities. And in the medieval times, there were a lot of people around within society who had disabilities, either physical or mentally, and they tried to explain these kind of disabilities. And people at that time thought that this is a punishment for sin. So others also thought that these people were born under the hostile influence of the planet Saturn. And I asked a friend of mine, she's into astrology, and she said, yes, well, Saturn is not, he's a bad guy under the planets. So people also thought that. And others interpreted disability as that these people are closer to God. They are suffering on earth, but then they go to God earlier, they go to heaven, and so in the end, yeah, they are closer to God. So a lot of explanations. 1660 to 1832, it was more the common sense of a more like protective and how can we help people with disabilities. So the meaning of they deserve charity maybe, and we have to support these people was coming up slightly. And so in London, the first hospitals were even built for people with disabilities, which was not common. They were still within society, obviously, so very visible. And they had their own homes and they lived within the communities. In the 19th and 20th century, workhouses came up. And I first thought, oh my gosh, workhouses, this sounds really awful. And it was actually. So they lived there and they worked there under really hard conditions. And it was really not the nicest way to separate those people from society. There were also some new medical professionals, the alienists. We know them today as psychiatrists. And they thought that by a moral treatment, these people can be cured. And this is why they created so-called asylums. And they put the people there, treated them, but they found out very quickly most patients are not curable. So they haven't had this pill for them. This unfortunately led that people once in an asylum never came out again in their whole life. So they were really separated from society at that point. Then the World War I came and the Second World War, and people coming back, so soldiers and sailors coming back from the First World War, were challenging this view that people with disabilities are a burden for society because they can't work, they can't do much, they just take, they have to be fed, they have to be taken care of. But all these soldiers are very highly, they have done the work for their nation, right? So when they came back, this thinking started to change again. And it was also from the government supposed to be that these people should have special workplaces where they can support society, where they can be integrated into society again. And after the Second World War, everything started to change really quickly. The Disability Employment Act came up, and this defines, and I just have to read this, this said that they want to guarantee a sheltered employment, it reserves occupations, and employment quotas for disabled people. So the first kind of law, if you want to say so, where people with disabilities got some rights. And also, and this is 75 years this year, actually, I've just heard it on the radio, that the NHS is existing in the UK, and they extended their rehabilitation program to people suffering from industrial accidents. So not just the soldiers anymore, also suffering from work accidents. At that time, mainly in the 40s and 50s, a lot of charities were formed as well to support people with disabilities, to find their special needs, support them, bring them back into society again. And on the housing market, it was also more thought, I was just realizing, or you probably also realized it, right? All these stairs down here on the campus. And the architects at that time first thought we need special housing for them. And then they realized, no, wait a sec, if we integrate this directly in our building plans, we can create spaces where everybody can be attending conference, for example. So this kind of accessibility thinking was included a bit more. And this is what I found quite interesting. The Paralympic Games actually were held in the, and I just have to read the name of the hospital, in the Stoke Medieval Hospital in Aylesbury. They did a wheelchair acre there, and this was a time when, the Paralympics were born. So also the sports perspective, that people with disabilities can participate in sporting events, came up at that time. And last but not least, finally, the asylum era ended after a lot of scandals about neglect and abuse in these asylums. They were closed, and this timing was luckily over. So, but as you can see, this whole timeline is really focused on, from my perspective, a very positive development for people with disabilities. They got again included into society. And then I asked myself, but what about today? So how do we handle this today? Do we really include people with disabilities in our daily lives? Or is it more, we might think about that. And then I got to our product world, because if we are developing products, do we think about people with disabilities? Do you have them in mind while developing? And so this is why I want to urge you today, stop to disability. So these people have abilities, and we should just stop to diss them in a way, right? But let me give you a little more context for this. So there's a definition by the Equality Act of the British government, 2010 by the British government, which is describing disability as you are disabled if you have a physical or mental impairment that has a substantial or long-term negative effect on your ability to do normal daily activities. This means, compared to my first interpretation of disability with this external view, this is a quite self-determined approach, right? So people that have a disability can say if they have a negative effect on their daily life. This is why I highlighted the you in here. And to get you a little bit more on board, I even want to put it on top and say, like, I am disabled if I have a physical or mental impairment, which has a negative effect on my ability to do normal daily activities. And if I've lost you on my way now, I want to give you a funny and maybe cute example, because I have to admit I'm a duck and a geese mom. So these are my ducks and geese, and I even brought them to Cornwall 2021. So the right picture is actually in Cornwall. And they taught me quite a lot, and they also had me preparing this talk. They convinced me, like, yeah, but we don't have a disability from the external perspective, right? So what shall we do? So we called our friend Jimmy. This is Jimmy. Jimmy has an Instagram account, as you can see, so please start following her. She's really great. And what would you say? Is Jimmy a duck that has a disability? Just by maybe hands up, who thinks that Jimmy has a disability? 1, 2. Yeah. May I ask, does somebody want to say why you think she has a disability? Just if you like, don't have to. Yeah?
I imagine with the bill being damaged, it's probably quite difficult to eat and drink.
Okay.
To other, I guess, competing ducks.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, very, very cool, because I thought the same, actually. This is why we called her. But I want to show you a little video of Jimmy now. And let me just hope that they're starting. Yeah, so as you can see, she has quite of a superpower in duck circles. So I asked my ducks, and they can't do it because the upper beak is actually in the way, right? So first we think she might have a disability, but she can even drink. So thank you very much for this drinking aspect, because it's just the thing. She can also drink regular stuff, and another normal activity might be to eat, right? So she can also do that. And the mess they are creating is actually always the same. So this is just a duck thing. Yeah, this mess around there is just like normal for ducks, really. Yeah, so, and then I thought, okay, but what else is a normal daily activity for us to enjoy our lives, to enjoy ourselves, right? And Jimmy has another ability. Hold yourself. So she can even dance. She has different dance moves. I was so impressed by that. And I thought, like, okay, well, can we, with the definition of I am disabled, if I feel a negative effect on my daily life, can we really say that she's disabled, right? So I wanted to show you this because they have this slogan on the Instagram account with why fit in when you were born to stand out. So not just seeing a disability as a disability, but also as an ability, right? And this should maybe give you some kind of a context when next time we see someone maybe where we think on the first thing, okay, he or she is disabled, but they are maybe not. We have to ask them in a way. But what does it mean for our digital context now? So we go back again to the definition of disability, which is a physical or mental impairment, and the ability as the physical or mental power, just to have this definition very close. And this is why I then came up, how can we include a little bit more accessibility thinking in our daily work, right? It's quite hard. I don't know who of you is talking with their product teams about accessibility on a daily basis, or whoever talked with them. So I had the experience with my clients. They were always like, yeah, but Madita, this will cost us so much money. You know, this is not worth it. We don't have users that are disabled. I said, well, okay, but we have to do it at a certain point, right? So I created the concept of the active user. Based on this definition, the users with a disability can tell us if they are disabled and how. So the active user is defined as one can actively overcome a disability by using one or more of its abilities. Based on an example, you're going on a website, or you're developing a website, and your users need to navigate through this website, right? So how can they do this? These are just two examples to click through a website and find the content you want to search for, or you are searching for. There are obviously others like the mouse, the trackpad, and different tools. So, but let's go with the touchscreen and the keyboard. And based on the definition that you have to ask your users if they feel disabled in which area, and you maybe have an interview with a user and they are telling you like, yeah, but I can't use them. I have a disability to use these tools because I can't move my hands, I can't move my fingers, or I'm shaking. This is why I can never navigate correctly through your website or product. So my clients most of the time then come up like, yeah, we need an alternative for that, right? So an alternative might be for the touchscreen, the voice control. Touchscreen most of the times on mobile devices, so they probably have a microphone, not the biggest problem here, right? So one solution, of course, as an example. The keyboard, if users can't use their hands, could also be an alternative by the eye tracker, so that people are just blinking. But still, then you have to ask your users, do you have an eye tracker at home? Because we don't deliver it with a website somehow. This gives us a lot of risks as well. You can ask your users, but not each of your users might have one, right? So these tools can still be seen then as the replacement as an ability. But you can see here, even if you use the voice control or the eye tracker, this always goes along with several disabilities. And the huge range of disabilities is, from my perspective and from my experience, the reason why we do not include accessibility thinking into our product world. Because the University of, and I hope I pronounce this correct, Rochester, has categorized the several common disabilities, which are just an overview. And they said, we just want to give an overview because otherwise it's just an exhaustive list of disabilities, not ending. In this list, you can see things we probably think this is normal as a disability, like a mobility disability, a visual impairment, deaf, and hard of hearing. But would you have thought when you develop your product that the attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is a disability, or the post-traumatic stress disorder is a disability? And how can you really prepare your website to make it accessible for these people, right? So this is the reason, coming back to our replacement tools, why I thought, okay, this is just a tool replacement jungle. This is helping no one. We would just be like finding alternatives for another alternative and another one. So what I came actually up with is thinking about how do our users receive the content on our website to make it a bit easier. And then I thought, okay, if they have a disability with their ears, so they can't hear, they are deaf, or they have a disability with their eyes, so they are maybe even blind, or I also see some people here with glasses. Would you say without the glasses you're disabled and with them as an assistive tool you're not? So this kind of question is really in the room. And if you think about receiving the content on the website, and you have to replace this content for people that cannot hear, what would be an alternative or a replacement for that? So it could be the eyes, right? So people that can't hear can still see. They can read your content. But if the eyes then are again a disability, which is possible, so I've heard of users that are blind and deaf and they're still using the internet, they're still ordering products, and this is really just amazing, I think. And a replacement for the eyes might be the hands, so the touch sense. So it's about body parts and senses we have. You might know this with the touch. For blind people, you have the braille language, and this is based on the touch mainly, right? So you can use this as a replacement. The good thing behind this is we are limited as human beings in our senses and in our body parts, right? So we don't have this huge replacement jungle of tools that are always changing and where we have to take care of. We just have this limited room of body parts and senses. But this is, first of all, just a definition for us how we might be able to replace this. What we actively have to do now for our users is to support them in their abilities. So the active product that we are developing will support the active user where they are using their abilities. This makes it a bit easier for us in our daily work to approach these users. So let's imagine your users are only, and it's easier if you say only, able to hear the content or navigate through your website. Sorry, this is about the navigation again. What might be support things you have to provide for them that they're able to navigate through your website? And well, I created these kind of support cards you can add to the certain ability. And one of the basic ones, and these are also just examples, but one of the basic ones is really a well-structured, not just HTML code, but code in general. Because the WC3, for example, I'm not sure who knows this kind of organization, they are really providing those standards. And if we follow these standards, the assistive tools our users are using will just attach to that. And we don't have to take that much care about it and find all the different devices. The developers of these assistive tools will do this if they also follow the standard. So this is really important to do that, follow those standards. A no-brainer probably for UX designers is the coherent information architecture, of course. You need this if you're only able to see, you need this if you're only able to hear, to have a well-structured navigation through your website. think about this. Most of the times we think to just copy and paste it from Amazon or whatever, but we really have to think about this information architecture, that it's logical for our product. And the last example is the speaking hyperlinks, actually, because we all know those websites where you have a lot of articles in the beginning, like those blogs, and you have them all teasered with just a few sentences, and then you have the ... read more or more. And this hyperlink is always called read more. So if you imagine you're only able to listen to this context, you can't see, no touching, nothing, just listening, and you want to find the right link to navigate to more information about this article, you will just hear read more, read more, read more. And you think like, yeah, but what shall I read more? So you always need the context to the headline, for example. Or on the mobile device, if you're just able to see, and on the mobile device, the headline is out of your screen view, and you just read more, and you think like, yeah, but was this the article I wanted to read? I'm not sure. So if you use speaking hyperlinks, like read more about article X, Y, Z, it's way easier to go for that. Same for receiving the content. If you're just able to hear, the audio description is a good way to go for, and also the alt text information. So the alt text is really for describing visual information. You might know this from platforms like Twitter or LinkedIn. They always provide this field for you. If you're only able to see, the contrast between the text and the background is very important. To also have it in situations like when you're in a train, you definitely can use this as well. The plain and easy to understand language is actually something that is very important, because if you're only able to see and you want to understand a certain context, you also have to provide it for people, for example, with learning disabilities. You might remember these kids' books where you have a text and then the icon is replaced by, the word is replaced by a little icon to learn the language. This is not different, but you don't want to do this on your website, right? You want to have it visible and readable in an easy language. So if you use these support cards, you can actually don't focus on the disability of the users, but you build your own guide of abilities and support. You have those body parts and sensors, you have the support cards, and you can attach them to each other. But we're actually working in product teams, right? So who is taking care of that? Who in the product team is really responsible to do this now? These are just examples of several departments within your company. Maybe I want to just focus on the core product team. You can use these cards of support now to attach them to several departments or roles or the skills even of your product team, right? So the good thing behind this is you just attach the responsibility. You don't necessarily attach the tasks to do it. So for example, if I as a UX designer take care of the well-structured HTML code, I'm more like the boss behind the developers doing this job right and checking on this. So responsibility does not mean you have to also do this task. Because in the end, we are just one product team, right? So we all have to take care of this. But if we attach these support cards to several skills and roles, we are able to start accessibility thinking a bit more. How can you do this in a more practical way now? Well, you all know those user journey maps, right? And if you just attach the lower row of your user journey map with some examples and the steps the users have to do at this point, and you find out which ability do they need to, for example, start a video and watch a video. What do you need? And which support do you have to give them for this particular step? This makes it way easier for you to integrate this accessibility thinking into your product, and you at least talked about it. Let's do a little summary of that. So we have the active user that is able to use its abilities, and we can just rely on that. We just have to provide these support cards. We have to support our users with the abilities they have, because we can never know all disabilities they might have or not have. And within the responsibility, of course, we attach these kind of supports to the special skills. So if I, as a UX designer, I'm not very good maybe in visual design, maybe I should not take care of the contrast part of things. Maybe someone else should do this. So check within your team who is a good person with the right skills to take care of this kind of support for a particular ability of your users. And just in case, think of Jimmy and remember that Jimmy is really a good example that, we maybe think someone is or has a disability, but they don't. So you can print her out and hang her on the board or somewhere if you like. And if your bosses or your team is not really convinced to get accessibility on board within the product team, well, you can always go for the company's revenue, right? Every company is up to money and they want to go for that. And these are just 3 examples, and I just hurry up a little. We want to present to you because if you make your content accessible for all, you can sell your product to all. And this is the main thing. We always think our target group is quite narrow, but who knows who's out there and who we can support with our product, right? The other case is the situational and temporary disabilities. So just imagine you're on a train. So a lot of people I've heard here and I've talked to were coming by train. You're passing beautiful coastlines and you're also going through very dark tunnels. So on your mobile phone, if you want to read something, it's pretty hard as well for your eyes to keep track on that. And this is a situational disability. Or I mentioned the glasses as well. This is also something which might be temporarily, because if you're using your glasses, you're totally fine. But if you forgot them or they are broken, it's not the best situation you're currently in. Or if you have a surgery, not just with your eyes, also with your legs or whatever is happening, hopefully not, this is a temporary disability. And if you're focusing on the abilities, you also include these people, right? They can always use your product no matter what. So you can also sell your product then every time and everywhere and at any time. And you make your SEO team very happy, actually, because Google in the end is no one else than a user with limited abilities. They have the algorithm, but most of the algorithm is really focusing on accessibility because they also have to receive the information we are providing. So you're a bit more independent of this algorithm if you also focus on accessibility. And if this is not enough for your bosses or your management or whoever is torturing you not to focus on accessibility because it costs so much money, well, then you can tell them there are legal requirements coming up in 2025. And now I know, I'm not sure who of you is from the UK, but there's a European Accessibility Act. So this will apply from the 28th of June, 2025, and the different EU states have to implement this into their national law. Funny side effect, in Germany, this law is called Barrierefreiheitsstärkungsgesetz. A word that long and not very accessible, but okay, it's called like that, right? So don't mind. And why is it also affecting the EU and other countries? Well, if EU businesses want to sell their products to a customer within the European Union, you also have to comply with the EAA. So, but let me give you a bit more context of the EAA. The EAA is there to help people with their daily activities, actually, which are important because maybe only available, like online banking and these things, within the internet. And people can't just go somewhere anymore and for example, pay for their electric bills. So the EAA is focusing on products. You can see it here also like terminals. So it's a very hardware-software combination. So they are considering both. And the services where the EAA is applying on is a list like this. And I found it quite interesting that the transport service, for example, this is a good example of a huge range of different kind of communication you have with your users. You have the ticket ordering, you have the websites to find information, you maybe have a phone which has to be available, and also the consumer banking. So the EAA is applying on all these products available on the market after 2025. And it's a bit like with the GDPR. I just imagine all the offices shortly before the date, everybody's just running around and panicking because of some laws that are coming up. I was quite frustrated about answering to emergency calls because I thought, oh my gosh, if this is not possible today for everybody to call the emergency service, what? Okay, might be a catastrophe, right? So, but they included it here, so hopefully it will be available then. Let's come to the conclusion. So if we focus on the abilities of our users instead of the disabilities, we have it as a product team much easier to include accessibility thinking into our product teams. We are most of the time so overwhelmed by all these different disabilities with all the special needs, we can never catch up with that probably. There will always be new tools that support those users. There will always be assistive tools that we maybe don't know and where we will never keep track with. So this is why we really think of the active user with its different abilities. And therefore, we create the active product. So we find these kind of supports for the certain abilities of our users. Always try to imagine just this one ability to see, to hear, to touch, whatever, and find solutions for this. Try to be very open in maybe do an experiment. Put some headphones on and just put your hand at the back and try to receive the content on your website. Just try this, and it gives us a lot more empathy for our users, because if we are able to see, we know how it's feeling to just see, but it's hard to imagine how it is that you are blind maybe or deaf. So this approach should give us a little bit more empathy for our users as well. If you like, and this is just a suggestion, you can create this guide of abilities and support, because you as a team have a huge metrics or a table where you can rely on. You can always reuse this, right? You don't have to do the whole process again and again. After a while, you get used to this kind of replacements for the body parts and senses, which makes it easier. Included, for example, in the user story map, but also maybe included into your refinement sessions, or especially in the reviews when you're presenting this to other teams within the company. Include this part of accessibility thinking, show them that you thought about it and that it might be easy really to support your users here so that you can spread the word within your company. Regarding the revenue, if you can sell, if you provide your content to all, you can sell your product to all. So this is really the basic information I want to leave you here with. And like I mentioned before, if your boss is not convinced by that, well, it will be the law in 2025 anyway. So yeah, no excuses there anymore. And this is what I want to close my talk with. So stop to diss the abilities of your users. Because in the end, if you think about the situational and temporary disabilities, we all benefit of an accessible web. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madita. That was brilliant. Any questions from the audience? Oh, got one.
Hello, thank you for a really great talk. You talk about the rules that are coming in by law in 2025 for the EAA.
Yeah.
Do we know if they'll have any equivalency with, say, AA or AAA accessibility standards?
This will be leaned on it. Yeah, but each nation really within the EU has to implement it into the national law, which doesn't make it much easier, unfortunately. So so for everybody who doesn't know this, the WC3 is providing certain criteria how to make products accessible. It is leaned on that, but as I mentioned, in Germany, they do it maybe a little differently than they do it in Spain. I hope this will not lead to a further reaction that they think like, oh, we don't have to take care of the WC3 approach anymore, which would be a disaster, right?
Yeah.
But I also think, and this is a problem with laws and bills, that they develop after a while again. And I think this is mainly because the EU is organized like this currently, that they can just provide some kind of you have to provide a law, and then everybody else, every nation wants to do it on their own. But in Germany, I can tell this for Germany at least, they are leaning on this approach, and we have the BITV in Germany, And this is also leaned in this direction of the WC3 standards and accessibility guidelines. So but I really hope this just gives the push in the right direction, and they recommend it within. Yeah,
Cool.
but it's a good thing to ask, really. Yeah.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. And any other questions?
Have to run up and down.
Hi. I've heard that obviously a lot of the benefits from accessibility can benefit all users, and anecdotally that all users appreciate well-designed content. Do you know if there's been any studies into whether or not these same benefits actually increase everybody's appreciation of websites, for example?
You mean regarding that everybody is,
Yeah. So even if you didn't have a specific need, you still feel the benefit, or?
I can't think of a specific study regarding this. This is just more from my personal experience as a consultant and coach that I realized when I work with my clients that it's this kind of, from one situation to the next, they realize, even for themselves, all right, if I'm on the train, if I'm somewhere outside or inside, I realize these situational conditions that are also affecting me. So, but I unfortunately can't think of any study which is really doing this. But maybe it's a good approach to do it finally, right? So if it's not available, because this is more the logical consequence where I can rely on from my experience currently. So unfortunately, no study.
I was struggling to make a question out of that one.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, we are here like a family, right? I'm quite happy that you are so kind. So I'm also very nervous here. So thank you so much.
Thanks.
Hey, are there a couple of example websites that do this really well, in your view?
In my view, this is pretty hard, because if I tell you one and you check on them, then it's kind of like, oh no, they are not. So I mean, maybe the best recommendation is really the WC3 itself, because they just did this huge relaunch of their website. They had a quite, from an external perspective, quite overcrowded and overfilled website before, but they just did a perfect relaunch in my perspective. So maybe this is really a website you can check out, like it's wc3.org, I think. And they did this amazing relaunch, and they are really, they are the source of those standards, right? So they might be the best example currently you can follow, and where I can say, like, yeah, they did a good job.
You'd hope so, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you hope so at least, right? Yeah. They at least tried the best they can, right? And this is what it's also about, right? Don't be overwhelmed by not starting to do it because you want to make it perfect. We humans beings will never be perfect anyway. So just, keep starting, but WC3.
It's not a question actually, but just as a suggestion, the Gov.uk website as well, and their guidelines are quite good for that. We've used some of them as like a benchmark.
Great. Any other questions whilst I'm in the crowd?
Or any other suggestion of a website where people discover there's good accessibility on?
I had an interesting one, which was kind of, and I'm going to get booed for saying this, but in terms of like where AI is going and where you've got websites that are configuring themselves based on user personas or people who are using the websites, what do you think the future looks like in terms of accessibility for websites and mobile apps when someone can say, oh, I'm this type of person, I've got these abilities, show content in this particular way, and so then the website will adapt itself to that particular user. So I was just,
This is an interesting thinking. My approach, or my personal opinion actually, is that AI, you still have to feed the correct information, right? So currently we really have to provide all our user research that we have done for our particular